We are so excited to have you join with us today for our online service. If this is your first time with us, welcome. We would love to connect with you. If you could just text CCFW guest to the number 97,000, we would love to connect with you, get to know you a little bit better. Well, let's dive into worship and see what God is doing.
You faith, your constant grace remains the cornerstone. Things that we thought were dead, breathing in life again. You cause your sun to shine on darkest night. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. The hopeless have found their hope. The orphans now have a hope. All that was lost has found its place in you. You lift our weary. Oh, and you make us strong. Instead, you took these rags and made us beautiful. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Oh, Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Our hearts adore. Our hearts adore. Our hearts adore. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet. Oh, Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Oh, we love you, Lord. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore.
Wow, what a great time of worship. Well, we're going to continue in the spirit of worship, and we are going to move to our tithes and offerings time. This is our moment to give back to God for all that He is and all that He has done. Now, we've been partnering with kingdom builders all around the world. In fact, listen today for a special message from one of our kingdom builder partners.
Hello, Christ Church family. This is Jason Morris in Northern Vietnam. And on behalf of my wife, Sarah, and our 4 kids, we want to say thank you for your faithful partnership with us. You guys have been incredibly faithful kingdom building partners with what God is doing here throughout this northern region of Vietnam for the past 8 years. But even more noticeably, over the last 6 months, your faithfulness has shined forth in an incredible way as you have continued to partner with us. God continues to open up incredible doors for us. Our primary work is training church planters and evangelists. Just this year, we've been able to open up 6 new churches, even with the coronavirus in full swing. God continues to open up doors. God has also given us opportunity to partner with local hospitals and other relief agencies during the coronavirus to provide medical supplies, food, and other items that were much in need throughout Hanoi and the surrounding areas. And you guys' partnership has enabled us to be able to do this kind of work ongoing over the last 8 years, but also during this coronavirus pandemic. Thank you guys. Continue to partner with us in prayer that God would open up doors, that the good news of Jesus would go forth with clarity and with authority throughout this northern part of Vietnam. God bless.
Thank you all for making big sacrifices each and every day to reach the lost. Well, now let's join Pastor Leah for our Kids Corner.
You guys, I just found the coolest book ever. You're never gonna believe it. Inside it has all sorts of names. It says Mickey Mouse and Ariel. It even has Winnie the Pooh, and it's signed by, it says Love, Cinderella. But where did this really cool book come from?
Disney World. Disney World.
I didn't go to Disney World. Did you guys go to Disney World?
Yes.
That is so cool. And Creighton, what was your favorite part when you went to Disney?
The book.
This book was your most favorite part?
Yeah.
Because you got to meet all the characters inside of it. Kinsey, did you get anything special while you were at Disney?
Yes, it was almost my birthday and I got a button and it says first visit.
That is so cool. You got something so special to help you never forget the first time you went to Disney. But did you guys know that there's something special that we can remember that's even more special than maybe getting to meet Mickey Mouse?
Yes.
Did you know that maybe we could do some things that help us to remember how much God loves us?
No.
Like when we stop and think about things like maybe one time your tummy hurt and you prayed and God helped you feel better. Or maybe you prayed at night that God would help one of your friends be okay, and He was. There's so many things that God helps us do. And when we stop and we remember those things, it'll make us just as excited as maybe getting that button or meeting Mickey Mouse or getting to see the Lion King members for the first time. So why don't we stop right now and let's pray and let's thank God for being so good to us, okay? Let's pray. Say, Dear Jesus,
Dear Jesus,
thank you for loving us
thank you for loving us
and always taking care of us.
and always taking care of us.
Help us to remember
Help us to remember
everything you do.
everything you
We love you so much.
do. We love you so much.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Pastor Leah. And now it's time for a very special message from our very own Pastor Darius Johnston.
Thanks for allowing me to come into your home this December the 27th. It's 2 days after Christmas. I'm sure you've already recovered from all the food hangover. Maybe you've already wrapped up all the packages, put away all the toys and all the decorations. But I thought I would just take this moment today and talk to you right here from my own living room. Since you're in yours, I thought I would be in mine. I'm here in front of our Christmas tree. For over 30 years, our family Christmas tree has been a very much part of our family. Now, the tree has changed multiple times. In fact, I was thinking back and realizing that Cindy's and mine first Christmas after we got married, we didn't have a Christmas tree. In fact, we got married on December the 9th of 1983. And that year I was an evangelist. And so we didn't have a home, we didn't have an apartment. We either spent the time when we weren't on the road with her parents or my parents or with friends. But our Christmas tree has changed a lot. But this tree behind me, like all of our trees throughout our married life, has told the story of our family. It's kind of been one of those things that every year when we put up the tree, there are ornaments that go on our tree that have very special meaning to us. There are ornaments from our very first Christmas. It's not a very elaborate ornament because we didn't have much money to buy ornaments back in those days. We have ornaments that we would purchase every year for our sons and then for our grandchildren. Ornaments that would represent whatever it was that they were into at that time, whether it was basketball or soccer. We have an ornament on the tree that Brendan actually made with his kindergarten teacher, Miss Porter. So it's an amazing tree of stories. Our tree tells our story. Every place we've traveled, every mission trip that we've taken, all of the highlights and some of the lowlights of our life are represented by the ornaments on our tree. I was reading a few days ago about the importance of memories, how important it is to have memories. Sociologists who study human nature teach us, in order for any community to survive and to endure, it requires two things. Number one, you have to have memories. And number two, you have to have hope. Now, think about that with me a moment. Those two are very vitally connected because our memories are what produce our hope. The Bible even talks about that. In the book of Joshua, in the Old Testament, we read the story of what happens after Moses dies. Now, Moses was the leader. He was the man. For over 40 years, he had led the children of Israel out of slavery in Egypt, across the wilderness, right to the edge of the promised land, and then he dies. And in Joshua chapter 1, the story starts out by telling us that Moses dies, and then God says to Joshua, now you're the man. As I was with Moses, I will be with you. And God instructs Joshua that it's time to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. But there's a problem. The Jordan River lays between the children of Israel and the promised land. And not only is it a river, but at this particular time of the year, it was harvest time, and that's when the rains came. And that's the time of the year where the Jordan River would sometimes get as wide as a half a mile. And it wouldn't just be a calm river, it would be a rushing torrent of water. Literally, it would have been impossible to try to navigate that river by human effort. But God says to Joshua, here's my plan. Today, I'm going to make you big in the eyes of the children of Israel. Today, I'm going to do a miracle. And when I think about that, I think back to how the children of Israel got out of Egypt. You may remember the story that Moses and the children of Israel were facing the Red Sea, and Moses lifted up the rod of God, and God blew the wind, and the water moved back, and the land dried up, and they walked across on dry land. Well, if I was Joshua, I would have thought, okay, God, where's the rod? I'll hold it up. That's not the way God chose to do it. God told Joshua, hey, I got a different way of doing it. I want you to get some of the priests, have them take up the Ark of the Covenant, and have them walk into the water. And the Bible says, when their feet touched the water began to roll back. And these priests stood in the middle of the Jordan River as the people crossed over. I did some thinking. There were about 2 million people, so I'm guessing it took at least a complete day for the children of Israel to cross the Jordan River. while the priest stood there holding the Ark of the Covenant. And then we pick up the interesting part of the story in Joshua chapter 4. Joshua chapter 4, beginning in verse 1, it says, "When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, 'Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight.' So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and he said to them, 'Go over before the ark of the Lord your God in the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of Israel, to serve,' listen to this, 'as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever.'" And then it tells us what happens. The guys grab the stones. You can imagine 12 guys, each guy grabbing a stone. If it was normal guys, I have a sense there was probably a little bit of competition. Like whatever size stone you picked up, the next guy had to get a bigger one, and the next guy got a bigger one. And they were to carry those stones to where the children of Israel camped for that night. As you read the rest of the chapter, you find that they camped in a place called Gilgal. Gilgal was literally 2 miles from the Jordan River. So whatever stone they picked up, they had to carry for 2 miles. And when they got to Gilgal, they set up this pillar of rocks, a stone monument, and it became a memorial. The stones were there to remind the children of Israel of the miracle that brought them into the promised land. You see, when I think about that, I think about 2 big thoughts for the day. Here's my first thought. Stories build hope. It's our stories that build hope. The reason God wanted them to pick up those stones and to build a stack of rocks was because God knew that over the next several years, they were going to have to fight a bunch of giants. There were a lot of giants that lived in the promised land. And God wanted them to be able to visually look back at those rocks and remember that they served a miracle-working God. You see, here's what I know is that the memories of what God has done for me in the past give me hope for what God will do for me in the future. And it's hope that becomes the foundation for my faith. So if I don't have any memories of the past, I don't have any hope for the future, and I don't have any faith for the future. When I look at our tree, I see stories. Those are our stones on the tree. They remind us of what God has done, and they give me hope for what God is going to do. Our tree now has 3 generations. Cindy and me, our sons, and now our grandkids. Our grandkids love to look at the ornaments on our tree and ask us the questions about their dads. And it's interesting to tell them the stories. You see, it's stories that build hope, and it's hope that releases faith. Here's the second thought. We are in charge of writing our story. You see, God gives every one of us a blank sheet of paper and a pen. And God says, okay, what are you going to write as your story of your life? What are we going to write? The The children of Israel, they had the chance to write the story. Now, just play with me a moment. Imagine what it would have been like if some of those dads would have said, I think I'll make up a different story. I think I'll tell my kids when they look at the rocks and say, hey, Dad, what are these pile of rocks about? One dad could have said, oh, yeah, that's when we built a bridge to get across the Jordan River. But it wasn't a right story. The story they should have been telling is that's when God did a miracle to get us across the Jordan River. You and I get to write our story. I think about the year that we are concluding, 2020. What kind of story are you going to write about 2020? We get to choose how we write the story. I think about this year. I think about the fact that during this year, for the first time, we had to shut down our church building. We had to learn how to do church without coming into a building together. We had to learn to use FaceTime, to use Facebook, to use Zoom. We had to learn how to use YouTube and church online. We had to learn how to be the church without being in a church building. I can write that story. I can write it from a negative perspective, or I can write and say, you know what I learned? What I learned is that the kingdom of God is going to go forward and nothing is going to stop God's kingdom. The church continues to do ministry. The church continues to see lives change. The church continues to see people's lives transformed and marriages healed and drug addicts set free. We have continued weekly to see miracles, even though for so many people, they still aren't meeting inside the church building. But we're doing ministry. We're worshiping. We're teaching the word. We're impacting lives. We're doing it different than we did it before, but it's still changing lives. Nothing is going to stop the kingdom of God. Kingdom of God's still going forward. We're still supporting 117 different missionaries and missionary organizations all over the world because people are realizing we are the church. That's what I'm going to write about 2020, is that the church is still moving forward. You know what else I'm going to write about 2020? I'm going to write that for many of us, our eyes were opened to racial injustice like never before. We were suddenly confronted with our part, not only of the problem, but our part of the solution. We need to write that. We need to have those conversations with our kids and our grandkids. You need to sit down and think about, what story are you going to write for 2020? What lessons are you going to learn? I try to do that every year. I try to sit down at the end of every year and think back over my year and think back what I don't want to do again and what I do want to do again. What do I want to improve on? What do I want to learn from this year? And that's what I want to challenge you to do. I want to challenge you. If you're married, as a couple, sit down and have a conversation about what story do we want to write from 2020? What do we want to look at? What do we want to, lessons do we want to say, we learned this from this year? What do I want to repeat? And what do I want to never do again? Our 2020 ornament that we bought for our family is a roll of toilet paper to remind us of 2020. What are you going to use as your story for 2020? Would it be possible that with God's help, you could say, you know what? God answered some pretty big prayers this year. The fact that we survived, the fact that we're still here, the fact that our family's still together. What story do you want to write? And would you invite God to help you write your story? I want to pray for you a moment. I want to ask the Holy Spirit to just speak to you and help you see this past year from God's perspective. Holy Spirit, I thank you that you dwell within each one of us. Holy Spirit, I believe that there are men and women, young men and young ladies right now who are watching me today, who, for some of them, for many of them, Father, maybe they are ready to totally forget this past year. But Lord, I ask you that we would not forget the lessons you want us to learn, that we would not just put it off on a shelf or turn the page of the calendar and act like it never happened. Lord, I pray instead you would help us to see the hand of God working even in the difficulties of life. Lord, to see your hand working in our personal life as well. Holy Spirit, I pray for some today, that today would be a day that they would decide that there were things that they are going to leave in 2020 and they're never going to pick them up again. They're never going to bring them back again. That there are other things, Lord, that lessons that we learned last year, Lord, that we want to grow even more this coming year. And Holy Spirit, I thank you that as we march into a new year, may this new year be the best year we have ever experienced. May we discover your favor, your direction, your wisdom on our life like never before. God, I pray that you will open up our minds to an awareness of you and an understanding of your word. Lord, help each one of us to be more dependent upon you than we ever have before. I pray that today in Jesus' name. Amen.
Wow, what a great day. If God did something in your heart, we would love to hear from you. Maybe you're ready to take that next step in your spiritual journey. In fact, if you're ready to take that next step, just text CCFW NEXT to the number 97,000 so that we can connect with you and help you move forward in your spiritual journey. Maybe you're watching this today and you're saying, I need prayer. We believe that God still answers prayer, and we would love to partner with you in agreement about your request. If you just text CCFW NEXT to the number 97,000, it'll send you a form where you can fill out that prayer request, and I promise we will pray with you by name. Thank you so much again for joining with us today. If this is your first time, we would love to connect with you further. Just text CCFW guest to the number 97,000. Church, we love you so much. We can't wait to meet together in person again next Sunday, 9:30 and 11:30. God bless you. Have a wonderful new year.